what the Church of Scientology is so afraid of.
This is SPTV.
Welcome back for more SPTV coverage of the Danny Masterson trial, live from Los Angeles. We got out of court early today because everything moved along so quickly this afternoon. So after the lunch break, remember on the update that I gave at lunchtime, Jane Doe 2 had 7 more questions to go on her redirect, and then the recross we already knew was going to be super, super short. That was done within about 10 minutes. After Jane Doe 2 finished up, we then had, let me get it right, her friend Rachel. See, this is one of the reasons it's so hard for me to keep track of this, at least in the first trial. Jane Doe 1 had a cousin Rachel who testified as a corroborating witness, or whatever the right word is, a precipient, I don't know. And then Jane Doe 2 has a friend Rachel. Cousin Rachel was never in Scientology. Friend Rachel was in Scientology. Okay, so not only did Jane Doe 2 finish after lunch, but then friend Rachel finished direct, cross, redirect, recross, and then friend Jordan Ladd, daughter of Cheryl Ladd, who was one of the originals Charlie's Angels, I believe, or one of the Charlie's Angels back in the day. This was a great afternoon of testimony. And I got to tell you, one of the things that for me, anyway, I'll take it in sequence. I'll try to keep my thoughts properly organized here. Okay. So you might recall that when I did the lunch update, I discussed Philip Cohen was making a really big deal out of, in this interview, you said you had 2 drinks, but in this testimony, you said 2 swigs, and drinks must mean, like 12 or 16 ounces, or ignoring the fact that somebody could say, I took 2 drinks, I had 2 drinks, I had 2 swigs, it means all the same thing. When we came back from lunch, DA or Deputy DA Ariel Anson sort of finished her entire redirect by saying, regardless of how much alcohol you consumed earlier that night, in your entire life, no matter how much alcohol you'd consumed in any previous instance, had you ever experienced the type of symptoms before from drinking alcohol that you experienced that night after drinking what Danny had given you? And the answer was no, never had, which really was kind of the point. I think if you're one of those jurors and you're sitting there listening to defense attorney Philip Cohen bicker about whether it was 2 drinks and whether it was 2 swigs, it all sort of comes down to the fact, regardless of how much it was, I had never in my life felt so drugged, so instantly out of it after consuming alcohol, no matter how much alcohol I consumed. So that was sort of felt like a nice little slam dunk way to finish the redirect. And then the recross was honestly not noteworthy. Okay, so then friend Rachel, they do identify her by her whole name. I don't know. I sort of feel weird using people's whole names just because we're so used to saying Jane Doe. So I'll just say Rachel. I've never known Rachel. I've never met Rachel. She is a member of the former second-gen Scientology community. I know of her. I've actually never had any communication with her before that I can recall. She was unbelievable on the stand. I mean, as she was testifying, I was like, oh my, it just keeps getting better and better and better. Not to at all imply that there was anything lacking in the previous testimony, but I'm not used to former Scientologists speaking so eloquently about Scientology to non-Scientologists. It's something a lot of former Scientologists struggle with. And friend Rachel knocked it out of the effing park. And there was so much testimony about Scientology that was entered in by her that I almost forgot for a second that she wasn't one of the Jane Does. She was just I'm using the word corroborating witness. I'm not even intending to use like an official word. She's one of the people that Jane Doe 2 had told about what happened with Danny. Now, here's why all the Scientology testimony came in. Because Rachel herself was a Scientologist. Jane Doe 2 was a Scientologist. The Scientology rules about upstats having ethics protection and opinion leaders, and the role and the altitude that high producers and celebrities and upstats and opinion leaders, and these are all terms that were not only introduced but thoroughly defined by friend Rachel. The fact that Scientology holds that people in these positions have, well, in Scientology, what is called ethics protection, which is that if you file a report or make a complaint against such people, you are the one who will be investigated for having filed a report against an upstat. What's interesting about the Scientology policies on this subject is the policies don't even have carve-outs for, but what if the report's true? And I say this from a point of expertise. I know from firsthand experience, the policy called ethics protection, it says upstats have ethics protection. And if a report is received on an upstat, you file it with a yawn and you investigate the person who wrote the report. There is no carve out for, but what if the report was accurate? And I got to tell you, that hasn't actually fully occurred to me until I just said it. It's just a cultural thing where you don't report upstats, because it doesn't matter what they do, because they're getting the show on the road. What's the point of complaining about something they did over here that technically wasn't okay? And so friend Rachel did an incredible job explaining how the Scientology, I'm going to use the word brainwashing just because, people will know what I mean. The Scientology conditioning and brainwashing, it doesn't just impact the Jane Does. It impacted the other Scientologists the Jane Does said these things to. It impacted how they even interpreted and received the information. It impacted how they discussed these conversations later on, at first with investigators and police officers. And this is where it seemed, and because she was doing such a great job explaining all this, it made Philip Cohen look like a degenerate POS when he tried to use some key specific, isolated, picked out of context words or phrases that friend Rachel originally used in her first police interviews when she was describing when she used particular words to describe how she first interpreted all of this and some of the ways she sort of justified and minimized all this to herself. In her first interviews with the police, friend Rachel spent a lot of time trying to explain to the police what was going through her mind when she first heard this information from Jane Doe 2. And she was trying to frame it in the context of the Scientology mindset. And yet the Scientology mindset causes you to justify and explain away and minimize and rationalize things like sexual assault. And it was honestly the perfect opportunity for Cohen to then cherry pick certain words and phrases and make it seem like she was now in present time testifying to something that was vastly different than what she had originally testified to. And I really think the jury is seeing the show that Cohen is putting on and seeing it for the show that it is, which is like, okay, we get it. Originally, they use different words because they're trying to explain the way Scientology is impacting all this. And you keep cherry picking it. And honestly, you keep looking like a moron because the Jane Does and the witnesses are doing a very good job explaining how Scientology impacted all of this, the relaying of information, the processing of information, the synthesizing it, the regurgitating it to the police. And it's becoming very apparent how clumsy and clunky and the police have been in interpreting everything that's been shared with them. And that's why I'm really not looking forward to the police testimony tomorrow, because it's going to be like the blind leading the blind. It's going to be like the blind leading blind people down a hallway they already walked down before. I mean, I don't know if that analogy makes sense. Okay, so let's see some sequential things here. Oh man, Jane Doe 1 just crushed it. I'm sorry, Rachel, friend Rachel. I was honestly blown away. Okay, and even right from the beginning when she got on the stand, they said, how are you doing? How do you feel? She goes, I feel like this is re-traumatizing. I feel raw. I feel vulnerable. I feel not safe. I feel scared. These are bad memories. And she didn't say it like she was being overly dramatic. She just said it like factual. Like, I'm not in a good place. I'm here. I'm going to do the best that I can. This is very difficult. And it framed her testimony very appropriately. They even said, do you want to be here? She said, no, I don't want to be here. I'm very afraid of retaliation from Scientology and Scientologists, and fair game is real. And I know people who have been fair gamed, and I am afraid of it. And the defense said, objection. And the judge said, overruled. And that set the tone. That set the tone for half of the testimony for this afternoon session. So she explained her history in Scientology. Again, very precise and articulate in her testimony. As far as the Scientology subject testimony goes, only Claire Headley has been as articulate or more articulate in talking about Scientology. Very, very impressive. She started talking about, she spent some time at the Advanced Organization with Julian Schwartz as her ethics officer. She also spent some time at the Celebrity Center. She talked about first meeting Danny and what his sort of his status as a celebrity and an opinion leader and what these terms meant. And she also said, and me in Scientology, I was always considered a downstat. And laughed. It was one of the few times that one of the witnesses laughed that I felt like it was truly appropriate. And she said, I was always a downstat. I was actually, told that I was a degraded being because I had been on staff previously and I had left staff. So I sort of had this position of subservience to the people who were upstats and opinion leaders and the celebrities and everything. And then that opened up a whole line of questioning of like, what does it mean to be a downstat? Is that a Scientology term? She's like, yeah, I didn't have a lot of money to be regularly doing services. Plus I'd left staff in 1991. Anyway, I was actually surprised how far down that road they let her go. As far as her own story, she told she talked about how back in 2003, 2004, she herself was having a lot of doubts about Scientology, was starting to question things, and was and worked personally one-on-one with Julian Schwartz, who Julian Schwartz is a name, a Scientologist, a Sea Org member, who keeps coming up in all of these reports of victims of sexual abuse in Scientology. Crimes against children, crimes against the elderly. If you're a Scientologist and you are doing services on L. Ron Hubbard Way, what they call the PAC base, Julian Schwartz is the one dealing with all of the crimes. So Julian Schwartz's name came up yet again. And Julian Schwartz was one. It was actually interesting because friend Rachel said she actually very much trusted Julian. Because the how it was set up is Julian was the only person in Scientology that she was actually even allowed to express her doubts to. And it's weird. It was sort of like, I almost want to call it Stockholm syndrome-ish, where on the one hand, you're told if you say any of this to anyone other than Julian, you're going to be declared a suppressive person and expelled and disconnected from. But because he is the only one you're allowed to tell, you end up having somewhat of a trusting relationship with him when really he's there to crush you if you step out of line. There was some very interesting testimony about that. By the way, Graham Brewer was back in the courtroom. It's amazing. Graham always seems to know exactly when he's allowed to come back into the courtroom and when he's not. Funny how that works. And so let's see. I don't want to go over all the minutia of her testimony because really what she was there to testify to was, yes, Jane Doe 2 really did tell me these things at the time when they happened. And I'm here to say what she said. And we're not going to go through all of it, but if you are on that jury, there are 4 witnesses. I keep calling them corroborating witnesses for Jane Doe 2. So again, today it was friend Rachel, Scientologist, Jordan Ladd, not a Scientologist. Tomorrow we're going to hear from her mom, former Scientologist, never really was. It's a weird one. I'll get into it more tomorrow. And then ex-wife of Giovanni Ribisi, Scientologist Mariah O'Brien. Now, even though Mariah is not a friend of Jane Doe 2, may or may not still be a Scientologist, I'm not totally sure, considers Jane Doe 2 to be an enemy, to be perfectly honest, she is still going to come and testify that, yeah, we had a dinner. Jane Doe 2 was over at my house. She blurted out this thing that she said Danny had done this to her. And then I basically disconnected from her as a result. I really don't understand how Mariah O'Brien is going to get on the stand, why she's allowed to, why she's even cooperating. I really don't. I guess I have to try to get into more of that tomorrow. But 4 witnesses who are going to testify that Jane Doe 2, at the time when this occurred, told me that this had occurred. How as a jury member could you possibly have any reasonable doubt that what Jane Doe 2 is testifying to really occurred when she told all these people, Scientologists and non-Scientologists? It really is something. I really thought the whole framework they put into place today was very effective. Okay, so let's see. I do have some things bolded here. I don't know why I have that part bolded. Cross-examination begins at 2:10. Okay, so, okay, I think I've highlighted this next part just to give you an example of how it feels like Philip Cohen really just doesn't have much to work with and is doing what he can. Here's how the cross-examination started. So your relationship with Jane Doe 2 in 2003 was that of best friends? And friend Rachel said, we were close. So you've testified before, correct? Yes, correct. And regardless of any of these conversations, all the stuff you said about being afraid of Scientology, the last time you testified truthfully, correct? Yes, that is correct. In November 2022, the last time she testified in the first trial, did you say that in 2002 and 2003 that you were inseparable? Yes, that is correct. So to categorize you as her best friend would be fairly accurate. She was one of my best friends. Given that, okay, I just highlighted this because it's like, he couldn't let it go that she didn't just say yes. It wasn't good enough for Cohen that in response to his question about being best friends, she said, we were close. He just, this is, I'm telling you guys, this method that he has of being overly overbearing and just not letting it go. If the answer he gets is perfectly fine, but not quite good enough for him, I really think the jury's getting sick of it. And because it leads to unnecessary questions, it leads to things dragging out. And it also just makes him look like he's being a dick and harassing the Jane Does. It's not a great look. And I got to tell you, there were portions of the cross that went like this. I saw some jurors' eyes start to get a little heavy. I think the jurors are just getting a little sick and tired of Cohen's routine. It doesn't actually bear fruit. It doesn't actually get where he seems to be going. So once he starts going down one of these lines of questioning, you're like, okay, here it comes. And I saw some jurors starting to tune out. And that's fine. That's good as far as I'm concerned. You guys know you guys know where I stand on all this. Okay, so let's see. There was another part that oh my God, there was this one part. Friend Rachel, I actually almost started laughing at this one because it was so good. It was so good. So he was trying to impeach her testimony about what month in 2003 did this particular conversation occur. And before she might have said, later, before she might have said earlier or mid, and he was trying to get her all caught up on, and she's like, look, we're in Los Angeles. There's no seasons of the year. No, I got to make sure I get this right. Okay, so she admitted that in an earlier testimony, she said something happened either in early 2003 or late 2003. And then she goes, but I was thinking about it and that couldn't be right, because if I said that actually doesn't fit into the fact that our relationship imploded at the end of 2003. And she goes, there's one distinct memory that I have that our relationship imploded at the end of 2003 around Christmas. And if I'm using that, I'm putting words in her mouth here. And if I'm using that as my stable datum, which is a Scientology term, if I'm using that as my stable datum, and if I know that that's true, then this other thing I said previously about what month that conversation would have occurred, that actually couldn't be true. It doesn't fit in with my timeline. And then Cohen got real smart and he goes, does it fit in with Jane Doe 2's timeline? And there was a sustained objection right at that point. And then friend Rachel said, look, this is Los Angeles. There's no weather to mark the occasions. And I thought that is such a smart thing to say, and not smart like, ooh, she had to think of that. It's so naturally correct that it just gives her entire testimony a certain level of authenticity, because that's exactly how people think. You think of, I want to say landmarks, like memory landmarks. I know what time of year it was because we were at the pool. So therefore it was hot. So you know what I'm saying? And so she's like, this is Los Angeles. There's no weather to mark the occasion. It was 20 years ago. She goes, but the end of our relationship was around Christmas time. So see, Christmas, the holiday she could remember. But there's no flowering of the trees, there's no falling of the leaves, there's no snow on the ground. I just thought it was so funny that she was pointing out that it's hard to remember when things happen because there's no freaking seasons in Southern California. I actually did laugh out loud for a second and then I swallowed it back in. I don't know. It just jumped out at me. Okay, so the next thing that I have highlighted here, regarding conversation. Cohen went into his same thing here. So you said that you are not giving a verbatim. You're not trying to relay verbatim what Jane Doe 2 said, and Jane Doe 2 actually started to get a little angry in her response there. And he goes, "Are there certain parts of the conversation that you can recall verbatim, and others that you don't recall verbatim?" And friend Rachel said, "Maybe." And he goes, by the way, when you spoke with Detective Vargas regarding your conversation with Jane Doe 2, did you tell Vargas everything? And she goes, well, as much as I could recall at the time. And he goes, do you have a better memory now than you did at the time? This is what I'm talking about. It's the old tired trick that he's doing over and over and over with all the Jane Does and all the victims. If you ever testify to something that you didn't happen to say in the first interview, he tries to make it seem like it would be impossible or incredulous that you could remember a detail now that you didn't say then. Of course, it's a straw man argument. The fact that you didn't say it the first time doesn't mean the information wasn't there. It just means maybe it didn't come up. Anyway, that's an example of something I really think the jury's getting sick and tired of it. It doesn't bear fruit. Okay. Let's see. What's the next thing? So let's see. I have a lot of this highlighted here. Let me just read this, guys. This was actually an exchange between Philip Cohen and the judge after the afternoon break. This was after friend Rachel, I think she had just finished up. Or she was about to finish up, and Cohen was objecting to the amount of Scientology testimony that was entered in by friend Rachel. He says, I want to renew my objection to the direct testimony regarding this witness, particularly about beliefs and experiences about Scientology. The breadth and scope of what came in was so far afield from relevance to Jane Doe 2. And given the fact that we've already heard about Scientology from all the Jane Does, in addition to an expert witness, I renew my objection under 352. It's one of the rules of evidence. The witness states, he said, the witness stated multiple times that she thought I was twisting her words. Oh, yeah, this is why I highlighted this. Oh, my God. The witness stated multiple times that she claimed I was twisting her words. But the quotes I was giving were her words. And then when I followed up to try and basically impeach what she said about me, the implication was that I was taking words. This is the defense attorney. Oh, dear God. The implication is that I was taking words and twisting them. And when I tried to follow up, the court sustained an objection. But I believe that the implication, it's probably more than anyone else, the jury needs to believe that the defense attorney is believable. I'm paraphrasing because my notes are a little clumsy here. It's very problematic to leave the jury with the impression that I, as a defense attorney and an officer of the court, would twist someone's words. And I'm thinking to myself, dude, that's your whole job. Your whole job is to twist words and misrepresent people, and you're acting like a good sir. My reputation has been impugned by the implication I would twist someone's words. And Cohen wastes so much time complaining about shit like this. There must be a reason that I don't understand as a layperson why. I mean, perhaps it'll also do with setting the grounds for appeal. And so he goes, I think it would be appropriate for me to, oh, this is good, guys. I think it would be appropriate to bring friend Rachel back on and allow me to read the statements from the interviews she gave either in her last testimony, her testimony from the last trial, or statements that she gave, the transcripts of the interviews that she gave to the police, to read them back to her so the jury understands they were her words. And guys, this was a dunk from the judge. The judge pointed out, you are the one who opened the door to the testimony from friend Rachel about Scientology, because you keep seizing on the words that she used in her first interviews with the police and how she described the way that she interpreted what Jane Doe 2 said to her. You keep seizing on these words and are trying to use it to impeach her testimony. So she has to testify about the Scientology beliefs and practices in order to explain why those are the words that she used. So you're asking me for permission to bring her back to the stand so you can read testimony she's given previously back to her, which is only going to open the door again for her to give more of the Scientology testimony that you're complaining that she gave. This is how court is going, you guys. It's not going well for Danny. It's not going well for Philip Cohen. And perhaps it's just the best that they can do. But yeah, that's why I highlighted that section, man. That was amazing. That was amazing. And so she literally said, think it over while we're on break. If you want to bring her back on the stand, it's more than okay with me. And even though Cohen had just been trying to ask the judge for permission to bring friend Rachel back onto the stand before dismissing her, it's no surprise to anybody that after they had a few minutes to think it over, they decided to let her go. So kudos to you, friend Rachel. You really knocked it out of the effing park. Okay, so then Jordan Ladd took the stand. Wow, Jordan Ladd is a small person. She walked into the courtroom, and I swear her head didn't even come up to the badge on the sheriff's shoulder. But I'll tell you, for me, I almost forgot that there were non-Scientologists involved in this case. And I'm sure if I think about it, we might have already heard from a non-Scientologist, but there's so many people testifying in this case who are Scientologists. It was actually extremely refreshing to hear from someone who wasn't. And I mean, I was reminded, like, yeah, this is something that didn't only occur in the bubble of Scientology land. And I for a second, I just tried to put myself in the shoes of one of the jurors and go, because look, if everyone testifying in this case is either a Scientologist or a former Scientologist, it might be easy to slip into this idea of like, well, of course, all the former Scientologists are going after Danny Masterson, and everyone's got an axe to grind. Now, I don't actually think any of the jurors are thinking that way, but I can understand if it might be easy to slip into that way of thinking. And that's why when Jordan Ladd gets on the stand and she's like, I'm not a Scientologist, I never have been. She said, I did do 2 little small courses back in the 90s, but I was never really a Scientologist. I was like, that's right. There's actually non-Scientologists who have testimony to give. And if anyone was slipping into that easy, lazy way of thinking of course, all the former Scientologists are going to be on the same side, someone like Jordan Ladd testifying blows all that out of the water. And Jordan Ladd as well knocked it out of the park. She was unflappable in a very calm, confident, assured, and gracious way, where even if Cohen was trying to give her a gotcha of like, well, wouldn't it be fair to say that you said this or you meant this or whatever, she was very willing to agree to fair points. She was immensely credible, immensely likable, and immensely believable. And again, the entire thing she was testifying to was essentially a 3-minute conversation that occurred 20 years ago. So considering that, now I did highlight one thing that is just worth mentioning. And I think this speaks to just the fallible nature of memory itself. And I'm just mentioning this because it's noteworthy, not because I think it scored any points with the jury. Well, here's what I highlighted. When you spoke to Jane Doe 2 in 2003, did she make any statements about Danny giving her alcohol? And Jordan Ladd said, yes. She told me that he handed her a drink. And he goes, did she say what Danny said about the alcohol? And she goes, I don't recall saying anything about that. And then it said, now you did do an interview previously, right? Might it refresh your memory if I showed you a transcript of what you said earlier? And she shows the transcript and her memory gets refreshed. I'm being a little clumsy about this. Here's where I'm going with this. There were 2 incidents where today Jordan made a definitive statement about something that in the previous trial, she had said she couldn't distinctly remember that subject. There was also something in the last trial, and it had to do with something like, what did Jane Doe 2 tell you what Danny said about this or about this, about this? There were minor points, right? But there was one instance where in the last trial, she said, I don't quite recall, but in this trial, she gave a specific statement. And then the reverse happened, where in the last trial, she had made a specific statement, but in this trial, she said, I don't quite recall. Now, I'm mentioning that as noteworthy because if I was on the jury, different jurors might have different opinion, might read different things into that. What I thought was interesting is that even when it would have helped Jordan's testimony, in other words, even when the answer to her question would have helped corroborate Jane Doe 2's statement, she still had this memory faux pas. I feel like I'm being a little inarticulate about this. Let me. So you guys know how Philip Cohen, the defense attorney, if he's asking you a question now and you give information you didn't give before, he's going to call out the fact that you have now recovered information you couldn't remember before, and it's going to sound like you made it up. But even the deputy DA had to refresh Jordan Ladd's memory about information she gave last time. In other words, let's use a real-ish example, but it might not be correct. Do you, Jordan, do you remember what Jane Doe 2 said to you about how much alcohol Danny gave her? No, I don't recall exactly. Can I refresh your memory about what you testified to in the previous proceeding? So do you see what I mean? It would have been helpful to Jordan and helpful to Jane Doe 2 for her to go, oh, yes, I remember this. And yet she didn't remember. I'm being a little long-winded about this, but I wanted to call this out as one, a really good example of just the fallibility of memory combined with, and Jordan called this out. She said, look, being up here on this stand is extremely nerve-wracking. And I'm just doing the best I can now. And I was just doing the best I can in the last one. And sort of like, I can't necessarily account for what I remember when I remember it. I'm just testifying honestly. And the fact that she made I call it a mistake. The fact that she made the mistake on both sides, I think canceled out any perception on the jury that something funny was going on. Anyway, I think you guys know what I'm talking about. Okay, so I highlighted that part. So let me see on the cross-examination, I have this highlighted. What Jane Doe told you sounded to you like, okay, I have to make sure I understand the context here. Okay. Oh, right. I'm going to start. Here's how Philip Cohen tried to recross on this. Okay, so you and Jane Doe 2, you're still close friends today. Yes. In 2003, 20 years ago, fair to say that as you sit here today, you don't have an exact recollection of what Jane Doe said. She goes, well, I don't have a photographic memory of exact words. Okay, is it fair to say that you're trying to get across what in your testimony, what you're trying to get across is what you took from the discussion, your best recollection? And she said, yes, that's fair. He goes, do you think that your relationship with Jane Doe 2 may potentially impact how you recall what was said 20 years ago? And she said, no, absolutely not. What Jane Doe 2 told you sounded to you like date rape. Fair? And she said, well, it sounded like it was violent in nature was my impression. And he's, but Jane Doe 2 never said the word rape. And Jordan Ladd said, correct. And Jane Doe 2 never used the word force. And Jordan Ladd said, no, I can't say that's correct. And he goes, and so here's what's interesting. When friend Rachel was testifying, Scientology was coming into play because it impacted how Jane Doe 2 processed and communicated about what had occurred to her. It also affected how friend Rachel processed what was being told to her at the time and how she discussed it later. Philip Cohen continued to make an issue out of the fact that Jane Doe 2 still didn't use these sort of electrifying buzzwords, even though Jordan Ladd wasn't a Scientologist. And this, I'm bringing this up as an example of points that Cohen is trying to score, that if the jurors have already been paying careful attention to the Scientology testimony, which they have, they would not give him those points, because he's sort of saying, well, Jordan Ladd wasn't a Scientologist and Jane Doe 2 still didn't use these buzzwords. And what he's intentionally ignoring is that it doesn't matter. It's Jane Doe 2 herself that, based on her Scientology indoctrination, wasn't inclined to use these words. And also based on other influences, like the counterintuitive response mechanisms to that victims of sexual assault have, which we've had a lot of expert testimony on that subject. And the jury was paying very close attention, taking a lot of notes during all that testimony. All this is to say, Cohen keeps trying to score points while shooting air balls. That is how it seemed this afternoon. And it was all Cohen, no Sean Hawley. We haven't heard from Sean Hawley in quite some time. And I mentioned seeing the heavy eyes on some of the jurors during sections of the cross-examination. I can tell you that was not true for the direct examination, particularly when friend Rachel was talking about Scientology and Scientology policies. At one point, I saw like 12 notebooks come up at the same time. And I'm like, wow, the jurors are really seem to be honed in on Scientology parts of the testimony. So let's see. Cohen complained that when friend Rachel left the witness box, she waved to the jury. He's really reaching, guys. He's scraping the bottom of that barrel. Okay. Okay. That is all. That's why we got out early, because friend Rachel finished, Jordan Ladd finished, and there were no witnesses ready to testify, which is honestly a bit of a bummer. It would have been really nice to get an extra half hour of testimony in to get all these proceedings done as quickly as possible for everyone's sake. Okay, guys. So that's my recap. I'm going to scroll up and address comments and super chats and stuff. Holy crap. Hello, all 3,200 people who are watching live. Hey, guys, if you're watching live and you haven't yet hit that like button, do me a favor. It's free. It's easy. And it helps send out notifications to other people who aren't getting them, it seems. All right, let's see. Here's one. Tenacious Art Girl. Thank you so much. Another Tenacious Art Girl. If things go really bad between Tom and Dave, I guess that's Tom Cruise and Dave Miscavige, who is more dangerous to whom, or is it mutually assured destruction? Oh, Tom Cruise is without question more dangerous to Dave. I mean, people think that Scientology has like just a whole ton of blackmail on Tom Cruise, and that's just not actually true. The GAY rumors about Tom are actually not true. I describe Tom as aggressively heterosexual. So there's no damage Scientology could do to Tom Cruise's career, in my humble opinion. Tom Cruise could probably single-handedly take down Scientology, though. So yeah, the power dynamic there is very asymmetrical. Okay, so Lethenda Grauklinger, do you see a change in Danny Masterson's attitude now that the testimonies are heard and how they came across as very strong and convincing? I think it's been pretty consistent for the last couple of weeks. Danny looks like someone who's been sent to the principal's office and his parents have been called, and he's very much not looking forward to them showing up. That's sort of how I describe his demeanor as he sits over there. He does not look cocky. He does not look arrogant. He does not look sure of himself. He looks appropriately. I think he looks appropriate. Okay. Turtleite. Thank you, Turtleite. Denver Steve-O. Friend Rachel or Rachel from Friends? Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I mistakenly referred to Rachel in the afternoon session as cousin Rachel. And I was like, wait, is this the cousin? But wait, wasn't there a cousin for Jane Doe 1? And turns out there's cousin Rachel and there's friend Rachel. All right, let's see. Joshua Armenta. Joshua is someone who came to court. Saw him last week in court. Sent you an email with video EVLAPD corrupt from Saturday. Okay. I do believe I saw your email, and I will make a point to get back to you about it. Thank you, Joshua. And are we going to see you in court this week? I hope so. Tell Pope I said hi. Okay, Turtleite. Shouldn't it be elf on an apple box instead of elf on a shelf? Yes, we're going to put that elf a lot of places. Apple box, shelf, you name it. Okay. Jess N. Hello from Tasmania. Love you, AA Run. I met someone in Ireland last month, and her auntie was high up in the Church of Scientology and said Tom Cruise has gotten out. Well, that makes me question everything about the person that you met, Jess. No, Tom Cruise is definitely not out. Okay, I see another one there, but that's a repeat, so I've already addressed that one. Lisa Robinson, thank you very much for the super sticker. Scrolling on down. Oh, there's nothing I hate more than dead air. All right, let's see. Cat, AC/DC fan. Good to see you, Cat AC/DC. Previous president was found guilty of 2/3 of something very similar. Hope that's a good sign. Keep up the awesome job. Are you talking about, was there a decision made in the Trump trial? Or are you talking about another previous president? I've not been following any of the Trump stuff. And are you talking about Clinton though? I'm not even sure. I'll have to find out what you're talking about. Cassandra Reiners, thank you for covering Thullis trial, which is way more exciting than the other person that covers this trial. Well, I appreciate the kind words. And yeah, glad to be providing some value. Destiny Salazar, Aaron, you tricked us all by going live 30 minutes early. A good portion of the chat is listening at 2x speed. LOL, hashtag double dippers. I admit I felt a little bad about changing the start time of the video from 4:30 to 4. But you know what? If you get out early, you got to make the best of it and start early. And then I realized, on the East Coast, 7:30 is already too late to be getting an update. So I figured, you know what? Even if you wanted to catch the live and somehow you missed it, there's always the replay. So thank you, Destiny. Always good to see you. Amish Gramish, greetings from Kyoto, Japan. Very nice. Attended protests at my local organ, Minnesota in 2008, 2010, and have been amazed at how much has been revealed about Scientology since then. Previous video, WFH means, work from home. There you go. Yes, I got to tell you, as much as it has been revealed from, since 2008, 2010 to present, now that this whole, what I like to call the SPTV phenomenon, which is, 20, 30, 40, 100 former Scientologists doing channels, talking about their experiences, growing up in Scientology, being forced to do Scientology, leaving Scientology, disconnection, fair game, all sorts of abuses at the org level, the Sea Org level, middle management, international management. I just think we're going to get like a whole new level of exposure, a whole new breadth and depth of exposure is what we're going to be getting over the next several years. So yeah, it's a good time. It's a good time to be exposing Scientology, and any day is a good day to not be in a cult. Kat, AC/DC fan, my vote goes to being called the AA team. I got to tell you, Kat, that's my favorite as well. I was thinking the A team would be like really good, but then you go, yeah, but that's already a thing. But what's not already a thing is the AA team. And that would have my vote, but I don't get a vote. It's up to you guys. Okay, Bradley. Here we go. Oh my God, a Scientology joke. Bradley Tarnopol or Tarnopol. How many Scientologists does it take to change a light bulb? They don't change it. They just disconnect the lamp. That joke was better than I thought it was going to be, because I've heard some Scientology light bulb jokes and they suck. That one was nice. Tarkina Meyer. I super chatted late yesterday, but did you see the video of Tom Cruise telling King Charles he can be the wingman? King Trump's COB. Watch out, Dave. Okay, I've seen thumbnails of the video that you're talking about, but I haven't actually seen the video. That is, I don't, what does that even mean? Like, there was a lot of gay innuendo in Top Gun. So for Tom to do a video telling King Charles, you can be my wingman anytime, makes me really question the judgment of whoever decided to produce that event. That is creepy. What, you're talking to the King of England. What is that even? What's even the most charitable interpretation of what that would mean? We're bros. We can me you and Dave can go out and ride motorcycles. Like that's so tacky. Anyway. All right. Steven says, hi, Aaron. Great stuff as always. I'm curious, how is it you can share every detail on the trial with us, but we're not allowed a video stream to watch? Well, Steven, the difference is I'm not showing you what the Jane Does look like. Now, some of the Jane Does, well, one in particular has spoken out publicly. The others have not. And in my opinion, that's the only reason cameras aren't allowed in the court. I mean, the media, the press are allowed in the court. They're allowed to report on what's happening, but we're not giving you photos or videos of the Jane Does. As far as I can tell, that is the only reason not to have cameras in the courtroom. Is it would sort of defeat the point of calling them Jane Does if you were just going to live stream their faces to the internet. Cat ACDC fan says, Trump, wow. So there was a decision announced in that case. Wow. Shelley Netzer Edgerton, Trump was guilty. Yes. Holy shit. Oh, wow. That's got to have some ripple effects. Jennifer Sanders, do you think that the defense will call witnesses before it goes to the jury? Tried to ask last night, but missed your response. Thanks for what you do. Jennifer, sorry for missing it yesterday. I do not actually think the defense will call any witnesses. They didn't last time. They did have some potential witnesses on the list for last time. They opted not to call them. I predict they'll do the same thing this time. Thank you so much. Kimberly Talby. As a survivor of SA, I want to say a big thanks for taking time away from your family to cover this trial. The deeper dive of info has been great. Hashtag SPTV. Well, thank you so much, Kimberly. After covering it for the first several days or the first week, I was like, yeah, there is definitely value add in doing these kind of videos and this kind of coverage of a trial like this. And that's why I wanted to keep doing it. So thank you for the kind words and thank you for watching and commenting. And I appreciate it. Okay. Edna Lead. Yes. Trump's verdict came in guilty with either 500 million or 5,000 million in damages. I'm going to guess it was 500 million. That is crazy. I did not see that coming, mainly because everybody always gets away with murder, right? Wow. What kind of ripple effect is that going to have? Boy, I can't wait to see that. All the YouTube channels, all the news channels that I subscribe to, a lot of news channels on both the left and the right. And even though I watch those videos, those channels, I haven't seen any coverage of this case. I guess I figured it was going to be one of these things that dragged on forever and ever and ever. I didn't even know we were waiting for a verdict. That's why I'm so surprised. I didn't even realize we were waiting for a verdict. Okay. Magic Mur. Super sticker. Thank you, Magic Mur. Valerie Boljak. Wingman is a real and regular term in the military. Well, wingman has a lot of real terms. I do know that. Usually it's someone who helps you pick up chicks or it's got the real definition of, your literal wingman if you're a pilot. But when you're talking to the King of England, I don't know, maybe it's just me, guys. Laura Goodman, thanks for all the coverage. Keep it up. Well, thank you for watching and thank you for commenting. Tatiana Esenia Baile. Thank you for the super sticker, Tatiana. All right, let's see. How far behind the chat am I? Oh, I'm almost done. We're almost wrapped up, guys. Okay, Annie Kurtz, not so fast on Trump's case. It was known, but his side continues to say not guilty. Appeal any moment, not over yet. Oh, I mean, I would expect any of these big moneyed interests to appeal as many times as they are, as many times in many ways to as many authorities as possible. That's probably a given. Even Danny Masterson, if he's found guilty in this case, will 100% be appealing. I've got no question about that. Okay, GG of 10. The Tom Cruise segment was after they listed King Charles' flying abilities. Oh, I didn't even know he was a pilot. He trained in the Royal Air Force. So Tom said the king could be his wingman. Okay, so it's slightly appropriate. Wow, I've never heard Prince Charles anything about him flying. Okay, well, there you go. Ceci. Donald Trump must pay $5 million in damages for sexually abusing magazine writer in the 90s and then defaming her by branding her a liar. Was found not guilty on the actual rape charge. Oh, so it's 5 million, not 500 million. Okay, well, that's a big difference. All right. It was just 5 million in damages. Okay, all right. That seems a little more reasonable, I guess. Jerry Hack. It's Ron in Canada. Oh my God, I love that. I love that. Trump was found liable in 2 out of 3 charges, 5 million in damages. Okay. All right. Are these getting Debbie Johnston. Aaron, I super chatted late 2 last night. I'm going to Philly this weekend for Taylor Swift. Should I go by the Philly org? Is it close to Lincoln Field? It's not walking distance, if that's what you're asking. It's right downtown, 13th and Race. You could go by. If you have a Mike Rinder doll, a Mike Rinder bobblehead, you could take a little picture. The Philly org doesn't really have its own parking lot, so you can't really get a photo of an empty parking lot. You can always go by. There's probably going to be like 2 people working there. It used to be a really successful org, and now it's just like all the others, an empty shell accomplishing nothing. Stephanie East, off topic. There are rumors that Tom Cruise and Shakira are a new item. Thoughts? I mean, guys, all I saw was some video of him literally chatting with her in what do they call them? Not a booth, not a stadium. What do they call it? A suite, like one of those owner suites, whatever. And I did not get the impression they were there together. I just got the impression they happened to be in the same booth with a whole bunch of other people and we're talking. So if there are rumors, there's no way. There's no way Shakira and Tom are an item. Those are my thoughts. I guess we'll see if I'm wrong. Okay, everybody. What is today? Tuesday. Tomorrow's Wednesday. Court starts at 9 a.m. You'll have an update for me 12:30 Pacific. And I don't know. It's early. Maybe I've got some other stuff coming later this evening. We'll see, guys. I don't know. I got to go out and get some food. Thank you all for watching. Thanks to everybody who watches until the very end. And I'll talk to you guys soon.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe